So our project was the NSA signage. Our stakeholder was Dr. Vanessa Lane. I'm Parker Grandy.
And I'm Zach Stevens.
So to start our project off, Dr. Lane had specific requests for the NSA signage. She had been having issues with trespassing with horses. They were going through and damaging the boardwalk that was just rebuilt. And there was also some native plants and some endangered plants that she had planted in the NSA that they were destroying through trampling through it and everything like that. So that was our ultimate goal. She wanted a total of 4 signs to begin with, and we ended up with 6 signs at a later date. And we were given the exact location she wanted them, and we'll explain the rest as we get through this presentation.
So our goals of the project were to create some genuine and authentic style trail signs and create national park-esque signs. As you can see, the sign on the right is for the Burn Trail, and that's kind of similar to the types of signs that we made. It's more of a freehand, rustic type of style. They more went for a darker type of stain, where we wanted to keep a lighter wood color. And like I said, we were freehand cutting with the router that Dr. Lane provided to us. We started out with a smaller bit and realized that the small bit wasn't really going to work for the size of the lettering that we wanted. And so we had to go up one size. And our goal was to recycle and repurpose some old lumber from the NSA that they used during their boardwalk construction.
So like he just said, we were utilizing the leftover lumber that they used in the boardwalk renovation. They had a lot of pre-cut 1x6s down there, which originally we were just going to use the full 1x6 itself until we realized that they had some 3.5 to 4 foot pre-cuts already. So we were able to actually just grab 8 of them out of a pretty big pile. But upon taking them back to the wood shop, we realized they were pretty wet for sanding. So we made the decision to sit them out and let them dry for a whole day. That way, when we came back the next day, they would sand perfectly fine. We wouldn't have any issues. These boards were already pre-treated, so we didn't have to worry about having to do any sealant or anything like that, even though we did decide in the end to do it so they would last longer. And that way the weathering and stuff like that would work a whole lot better.
So as he said, we had to leave them out to let them dry before we sanded them, because the grit sandpaper that we had was more for a refinement type of status. It wasn't really for actually shaving off a lot of wood, so we couldn't really get through all that wet lumber right off the bat. So the main goal was we had to sand them down the bare wood to get rid of the salt treat that had come out during the weathering that it had endured while sitting out there over the summer. And we wanted to make sure that the treating process hadn't leached through. So in the treating process, when they pressure treat, sometimes it'll make pines turn especially yellow. And we were trying to get rid of much of that yellow tonnage as we could. And we began to start marking after this stage.
So with our first marks, we were trying to do our best to decide how we wanted the letters to lay out, where they were going to lay out, and how they were going to look. Originally, we were going to center them as best as possible on the board, but we realized very quickly that we were going to run out of board length when we did that. So we made the decision to just center them on the center line of the board and move them as far back to the left of the board as we possibly could. And then we would just take whatever was left on the other end of it and we would cut it off and make it symmetrical that way. So the first cuts we utilized with the router, they were really rough looking. Routers typically aren't known for refinement. So after Zach made all the cuts with the letters, I would come back behind him and utilize a Dremel with a sand wheel. And I would go through the letters and refine them as best as possible to make them more refined, more detailed, and more readable. So as you can tell from that top left picture, it's a pretty rough cut. There's a lot of splintering in the wood and stuff like that, which is also caused by the pre-treatment because it's still wet. So I took the Dremel and we refined it, and as you can see in the bottom right corner, it's way more readable. It looks a whole lot nicer. It still has that rustic look effect from just hand cutting and hand refining it, but it's easily readable.
So for the finishing process, same as the last slide, the top left picture is how the boards looked before we painted them or stained them at all. It's a pretty nice looking rustic sign, bare like that, but we wanted to implement more based off of what Dr. Lane instituted for us to do. So after we sanded it off and got rid of all the sawdust that was left what's inside the letters, we implemented paint inside of those. For the no horses signs, we wanted to go for a nice bold red color, and for the NSA boundary, as with most boundary signs, we went for a yellow. The paint was a little bit thicker than what we had predicted, so we had to sit them outside for a few hours and let that dry before we could actually go back. And after we got done with the paint, we actually had to bring it back in. As you can see in the bottom right picture, you see some of that paint was bleeding out from where we tipped it over just a little bit too early. So it took a good minute to get all that paint off with the sander with that finishing sandpaper. But after that, we went back and we started sealing with polyurethane. And after sealing with polyurethane, we went for a mineral clear coat. And that mineral clear coat is a lot thicker than polyurethane, and it takes about an hour just for the mineral clear coat to dry. But after it dries in, those boards should last an easy 5 to 7 years just by themselves.
So after the finishing process took place and we got all the paint and the stain and the sealant placed on those signs, we went and spoke with Dr. Lane, and she had designated points already predetermined where she wanted these signs. Like I said originally, we only had 4 planned to cut, and then in the middle of the process, she decided she wanted 6. That way she could have a no horses and an NSA boundary in 2 spots, and then just 2 no horses in other 2 spots. So in order to do this, we went and took 8-foot 4x4 posts. We cut them directly in half at 4 feet, and then we would take those 4x4 posts and bury them a foot into the ground. That way they would be as stable as possible, because Dr. Lane didn't want to use any type of concrete or anything like that. So we went out to the predetermined locations. The first 2 spots were on the farm side near the turf and the ag field test sites, facing towards them, and we would dig a hole, foot in the ground, compact the soil back in, and then we would take both of those 2 signs, NSA boundary on top, no horses boundary, or the no horses sign on the bottom, and screw them directly in. And those 2 signs apart are approximately like 50 yards down the main trail near the longleaf and loblolly stands. Secondly, the 2 single no horses signs were placed on the inside of the NSA boundary near the dirt road up by Lakeside. Our first no horses sign went by the big pine tree that was situated next to the impoundment, as you can see in the bottom right picture. Our second no horses sign was placed by the old tractor bridge on the far right corner, just to deter any possible people who were riding horses to even want to do that. And it's also a backup plan in case they claim they never saw the signs, and Dr. Lane can say, well, they're here, and they can't really get out of anything if they get caught trampling over anything that they shouldn't be out there doing.
And that's fact. I mean, this project took a lot longer than what the given time frame was. Each one of the signs took anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes to cut out alone. And then you add in just the entire process of sanding and finishing with a Dremel, and then go through and stain each one of these boards individually. We probably had an easy 30 hours put into the project over just the given time limit that we had. But overall, we think that it turned out really good for the amount of time that we actually put into it, and we hope that it will deter anybody from wanting to encroach on the NSA in any type with horses at any point.
Yeah, so thank you for listening to our presentation. We appreciate it, and have a good day. That's got to be like a solid